The Sutherlands breaking their silence 6 months after authorities say the 25-year-old was kidnapped while jogging.
Sydney's family talks about the case in a moment between Sydney's mom and the accused killer. Tonight they're sitting down speaking only to KRK's Mitch McCoy.
Sydney Sutherland is my baby girl, my best friend.
Maggie Sutherland, Sydney's mom, says the mother-daughter duo were always side by side.
We go to ball games, instead of sit with friends, she would sit with me.
On an August afternoon in rural Arkansas, a mother stood in a field surrounded by hundreds of volunteers. They were searching for her daughter. Dust clung to their shoes. Helicopters circled overhead. The heat pressed down like a weight. A man stepped forward from the crowd. He wrapped his arms around her. He told her they would find Sydney. She didn't pull away. Why would she? This was Newport, Arkansas, a place where people knew each other, trusted each other. What she didn't know, what no one standing there knew, was that the man comforting her had already buried her daughter in a shallow grave. He wasn't searching. He was performing. His name was Quake Llewellyn. And this is the story of how a small town discovered that evil had been walking beside them the entire time, before she became a headline. Sydney Sutherland was simply Sid. She was born in September 1995 in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and raised on a family farm near the quiet town of Grubbs. Her childhood was a kind that feels almost cinematic now. Open fields, family dinners, community football games, and neighbors who waved from passing trucks. At Tuckerman High School, Sydney was everywhere. She joined clubs, played softball, earned academic recognition. She was voted Outstanding Senior in 2014, not because she demanded attention, but because she naturally drew people in. Friends describe her as magnetic, bright, the kind of person who listened when you spoke, really listened. Her senior quote read, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." It wasn't just a line for a yearbook. It was a blueprint. After graduation, she pursued nursing, first earning her licensed practical nurse certification in 2018, then advancing to become a registered nurse by the end of 2019. By 2020, she was working at Unity Health Harris Medical Center in Newport. It was a brutal year to work in healthcare. Hospitals were strained. Fear was constant. The world felt unstable. Sydney showed up anyway. She worked long shifts, comforted patients who couldn't see their families, carried emotional burdens most people never witness. And when she needed to breathe, she ran. Running was her ritual, her therapy, her quiet reset button after chaos. The roads near Highway 18 and County Road 41 were familiar, rural, peaceful, safe, or so she believed. On Wednesday, August 19, 2020, she left home in a white athletic top and black shorts. A security camera captured her walking down the driveway. It would be the last image of her alive. It was just after 3 p.m. The Arkansas heat shimmered off the gravel roads. Somewhere along County Road 41, a pickup truck approached from behind. Inside was 28-year-old Quake Llewellyn, a third-generation farmer, someone who had grown up in the same region, attended the same high school years earlier. According to his later confession, he passed Sydney once, then he turned around. What happened in those next minutes would unravel an entire community. Llewellyn told investigators he struck her with his truck, but instead of calling for help, instead of dialing 911, instead of seeking medical assistance, he made a decision. He forced her into the back of his vehicle. He drove roughly 3 miles to a remote farm location. There, prosecutors said he raped her, then he killed her. The medical examiner would later determine her death was caused by multiple blunt force injuries. Afterward, Llewellyn dug a grave in the soil of farmland his family knew well. He buried her, covered the earth, and drove away. He returned to his routine, checking wells, tending to rice fields. He went home. He ate dinner with his family. He slept. By 7 p.m., Sydney's boyfriend knew something was wrong. She wasn't answering her phone. She had never disappeared without warning. Calls were made. Social media posts went live. Within hours, Newport mobilized. This case was different from many missing person investigations. There was no hesitation. Law enforcement moved immediately. Sheriff David Lucas had watched Sydney grow up. She wasn't just another report. Search dogs were deployed. Helicopters scanned fields. Volunteers arrived in waves, walking shoulder to shoulder under the blazing sun. They combed an area stretching miles across Jackson County. On August 20th, authorities found Sydney's cell phone in a field near County Road 41, roughly a quarter-mile from her home. It was a chilling discovery. Phones don't simply fall unnoticed from careful runners. Investigators pulled digital records, data from her Apple Watch, cellular pings, and among the volunteers searching the fields was Quake Llewellyn. Witnesses would later recall seeing him multiple times over the course of the search. He joined the Facebook group dedicated to finding her. He stood beside her family. He offered comfort. He hugged her mother. At first, theories swirled. Was it a passing stranger? A random act of violence? Someone from outside the county? But digital footprints don't lie easily. When investigators examined Llewellyn's phone, they found a geolocation application, Life 360. The data placed them within yards of the burial site at the exact window when Sydney vanished. Another digital tool, Fog Reveal, helped identify devices present in the area during the time frame of the crime. The net tightened. Then came the physical evidence. When Llewellyn voluntarily appeared at the police station during the investigation, he wore area work boots. He later admitted they were the same boots he had worn while burying Sydney. Investigators seized them. A search of his family's properties uncovered clothing matching what he described wearing that day. Black pants, shirts, items with blonde hair present. The pieces aligned with disturbing precision. Meanwhile, Llewellyn shifted his narrative. To a forensic psychologist, he described the incident as an accident, claiming he struck her unintentionally and panicked. But even within that version, he admitted removing her clothing, trying to mess with her, as documented in evaluation notes. Prosecutors were clear. This was not panic. This was violence followed by concealment. On August 21st, after nearly 3 days of searching, authorities blocked off a section of rural farmland. Volunteers were quietly told to go home. They didn't need details. They understood. A body had been found in a shallow grave. The Arkansas State Medical Examiner confirmed it was Sydney Sutherland. Hours later, Quake Llewellyn was arrested, charged with capital murder, rape, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse. The shock rippled through Newport. People knew him. He had no violent criminal history. He had stood among them, and he had known all along. Initially, Llewellyn pleaded not guilty. His defense sought a mental evaluation. In January 2021, a forensic psychologist determined he was fully competent, both at the time of the crime and during proceedings. No psychosis, no mental disease, no defect. He understood what he had done. Prosecutors announced they would seek the death penalty. The trial was moved to Lawrence County due to intense media coverage, but the trial would never happen. On October 1st, 2021, 408 days after Sydney's death, Llewellyn stood in a packed courtroom. More than 60 people wore pink, her favorite color. He pleaded guilty to capital murder and rape. In exchange, The state removed the death penalty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole, plus another life sentence. No possibility of release. Then came the victim impact statements. Sydney's mother asked him to look at her. He did. She asked whether her daughter fought, whether she cried, whether she called for her brothers. She told him the arms that comforted her during the search were the same arms that killed her child. Her father described him as a coward, a 300-pound man in a truck versus a 100-pound woman on foot. The courtroom wept. Llewellyn said nothing. Sydney was laid to rest at Greenhouse Cemetery. Due to pandemic restrictions, her funeral attendance was limited, but it was live-streamed. Hundreds watched remotely. Arkansas State University, Newport established the Sydney Sutherland Memorial Scholarship for healthcare students. Each year, friends and family gather on County Road 41, releasing pink balloons into the sky. A memorial stands near where she was last seen alive. Quake Llewellyn now serves his sentence at the Varner Supermax unit in Arkansas. No parole, no second chance. Years later, court rulings allowed portions of the investigative file to be released for media productions. The case continues to draw national attention. But for the Sutherland family, attention is not closure. Closure would be Sydney walking through the door. Closure would be hearing her laugh. Closure would be an ordinary Wednesday afternoon that stayed ordinary. There are still questions. Was it premeditated? Was it impulse? Was the guilty plea remorse or strategy? He has never publicly explained. Perhaps there is no explanation that would ever make sense. What remains is this. Sydney Sutherland was 25 years old. She loved her nieces. She loved her patients. She loved to run. She believed life was about finding your gift and giving it away. On August 19th, 2020, she gave nothing but trust to the road she had traveled so many times before. And someone she knew turned that trust into violence. In Newport, Arkansas, the fields are still wide. The roads are still quiet. But along County Road 41, the silence carries weight. Because sometimes the most terrifying truth isn't that evil exists. It's that it can stand beside you and pretend to help you search. And somewhere along County Road 41, the wind still moves through the Arkansas fields. But it no longer sounds the same, because now it carries a name, Sydney Sutherland, a daughter, a nurse, a life that should have continued. If her story moved you, if it reminded you how fragile ordinary moments can be, take a moment to honor her memory. Share this story. Keep her name alive. And if you want more in-depth true crime documentaries that uncover not just what happened, but why, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next case. Until next time, stay aware, stay vigilant, and never forget the stories that deserve to be told.